All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our weekly MS Office Hours. I am one of your co-hosts, Victoria Dean.
Hi there, everybody. I am also co-hosting today MS Office Hours. This is Stephanie Stevens, and we are so excited to have Jethro Seegers with us today talking about one of the newest education sort of unveilings that we have, which is Viva Connections in education. So without further ado, Jethro, we will turn it over to you, and I just want to make sure that I have made you a presenter, so hold on to your
Awesome.
hat while I do that, and we'll turn it to you.
No problem.
All right, you should be good to go.
Awesome. Let me share my screen real quick. Let's start with a PowerPoint first. Let me know when you can see my screen or the PowerPoint presentation.
It's loading. It's loading. We've got it.
Awesome. That's more than I have because I'm not there yet. Still working on it, it says. But let's start with introductions. There we go. So my name is Jethro Seegers. I'm a senior program manager on the higher education experiences team. And I'm also the product owner for a little product called Viva Connections for Education. If you have any questions, feel free to put it in the chat or unmute yourself. Let's make this very interactive. I'm not going to kill you by PowerPoints. I'm going to go fairly quickly through the necessary slides I want to show. And then let's dive into the product so we can actually see what is it, how can we use it, what are the good, neat things. My email is all there as well. If you have a question, email is the slowest. I'm letting you know that right now. If you need something quickly, send me an IM on Teams. SLA for Teams is a lot faster than it is for email. So fair warning. It wouldn't be May 4th if I didn't make a small reference to our beloved franchise Star Wars. So this is the way, ladies and gentlemen, bringing it in. So what I'm going to do is really quickly put a little bit of context. Why do we take Viva, which has been branded throughout Microsoft as the employee experiences platform, and why did we tag it for education? What is the difference between Viva Connections for education and Viva Connections, if there is any difference? I'm going to show you in product very detailed what is available. Like I said, let's make it interactive. If you have questions, concerns, let's bring it up there as well. And if we have time, let me show you a few things that are available for you within education, within the Viva stack, a little bit outside of Viva Connections, but where it makes a lot of sense to start thinking about what other modules within the Viva stack would make sense for us as an organization to start driving some value in there. So first things first, why Viva Connections for education? And more specifically, why the target audience for students? So this is the first time where we're really starting with the student persona and trying to help them with some of the challenges that they have throughout their organization. So one of the things when we started thinking about where do we want to help our students, we did a lot of research. We talked to a bunch of organizations, not just in the US, but also globally, to start thinking about what are some of the things that we're seeing throughout the world where we could help our students. The first thing that students came back to us and says like, hey, we have a lot of information sources that we're juggling with, whether it's finances, whether it's library loans that we're doing, whether it's scholarship, internships, whether it's our assignments, whether it's campus life, all these different systems exist on our campus, and we just have to know where everything's at. Especially first year students, especially first generation students, really are overwhelmed with the amount of information and the amount of information sources that they need to tackle on a day-to-day basis. Which actually leads us into the second problem. What we're getting a lot, and this is not just from a student perspective, we've gotten that feedback. We actually have gotten that from a lot of CIOs and CTOs as well within higher education is the lack of connection between students and the organization is growing, which is causing in a lot of ways students to be disconnected from the organization, which is then in that turn causing a lot of dropouts to see with our students as well. This is actually a number from admissionally from actually last year, is that 30% of all first-year students never get to their sophomore year, which is a high number. And when we look at the underlying reasons, a disconnect from the organization and not feeling as a part of the education community that the university, college, or even school district is trying to represent is one of the major causes. So when we looked at that, we looked at, okay, there's something that we should be doing. And when we looked at the three different things that we could be delivering is, first thing is to really give our students a digital home, is a centralized location within Microsoft Teams that helps students with a centralized information catalog, almost, let's call it, where they can see all the information that they need to see dedicated to them. So this is not a one-size-fits-all kind of model. It is going to show all the information relevant to the student who's logged in. So when we're talking about courses or assignments or tuition fees, it's always going to be the information of the student who's logged in, right? It's not going to be generic information. So we really are trying to create, apologies, a centralized starting point, a digital home for the students that is personalized to their experience. Now, the structure of the dashboard, the structure of the platform will be driven by the organization. It's the organization that will decide what type of information is going to be presented, but the content and who will it represent is actually the student who's logged in. The second one is to simplify the experience, is really to give them a place where all their information is at, whether they're documents, meetings, tuition fees, even external non-Microsoft systems have a place in that digital home, so that the experience for the student gets a lot more streamlined and therefore also a lot more simple. So that way there's no confusion. Where do I need to go? Every single system can have a reference on Viva Connections for Education. And the last part is really driving that connection between the organization and the student, but also the students among themselves. The ability to create communities where students find like-minded people, but also communities where students can go in and ask questions. Where do I buy my textbooks? Where do I find this? Where do I find that? Really driving people to collaborate, communicate, and actually work together to make sure that we have that concept. And that's really where Viva Connections comes into play. Now, how are we going to achieve that? Well, the first of all is pillar one is that driving that digital home. So what we're going to do is give them a centralized place with three big components. One is our dashboard, which you see in the middle of the interface. On the right-hand side, you're going to see the news feed, again, tailored to the students. And then at the bottom, which I'll show you in a bit, is a number of resources that can be targeted towards the student. I'm going to say this specific word a lot, personalized, because it's targeted to the student who is logged in, and I'm going to show you that in the demo, how that is covered. So it's personalized to every single student. The way that we're doing that is by delivering audiences to every individual card. So you can say this card is available to my first year students. These are cards for my second year students. This is a card for my engineering students. This is a card for this specific department. So you control who gets to see what type of information and how it's represented. The same thing goes for the newsfeed on the right-hand side. The newsfeed is controlled by the organization, but is targeted to a group of students at that specific point. We're trying to give a consistent experience. Everything you see here is brandable. As the top right corner, you're going to see Bellows College. You can rebrand this to the name, of course, your organization. You can change the banner. You can change the icon. So you can fully customize it to really streamline it with your brand recognition within your organization. Just to give you one example of some of our preview customers, we had a customer that just made this the e-campus. There's nowhere Viva Connections to be seen on that page. It's e-campus within that specific organization, and that's the brand that they were going for. The second pillar is all about the simplification of the student experience. So one thing you can do here is show recent files, right? This is a card that the community has built that we definitely wanted to highlight, because collaboration and working on files is a day-to-day operation that students are going to be doing. So having access to your recent files of your OneDrive is going to be essential here. So we wanted to make sure that that was highlighted as well. The second thing is our resources, like I mentioned earlier. That's the third next to the dashboard and the news feed. Here as well is where you can streamline and personalize the experience. So you can say, for Department X, these are the resources that we want to show. And these can be internal and external resources. Don't need to be all Microsoft resources, right? We really want to make sure that these are resources that the student need. Whether they're Microsoft or not, that's not really up to us to define. That's really up to the organization. If you want to put a link here to your learning management system like Canvas, Blackboard, Moodle, etc., you can absolutely do that. If you want to put in here a link to your payment system for tuition fees, you can absolutely do that. And again, emphasizing the fact that you can customize the resources based, again, on the user who is logged in. And then finally, your tasks, upcoming events, you can put your calendar in here, you can put highlights in here, notifications, so you can actually give all the information to the student as they need. Like I mentioned, you can target specific groups of people, and this is fully integratable with your current identity management system, right? So if you already have dynamic groups, whether they're security, DLs, teams, it does not matter. You can reuse those groups to use them as audiences in your platform. So you can just reuse the system that you have to make sure that you have that personalized experience towards the students. And then we know that certain people have English as their second language. Potentially, they prefer to see the dashboard in a different language. We automatically translate the whole UI. The cards that Microsoft make available will be translated as well. For example, assignments, courses, the tasks. Here you have your feed. We will translate that in the preferred language of the user. So we're just looking at the preferred language of the user, and we're making that available throughout the whole Viva experience. And then finally, the most important thing that a lot of our students were asking for is we want to have the same experience, whether it's on mobile, desktop, or in the browser. If we see our assignments on the desktop, the same assignments and the same experience, the same look and feel we want to see on our mobile experience. And that's exactly what Viva Connections for Education is doing. And especially for you guys who potentially are going to create your own cards or are going to publish these dashboards, you only have to do the work once. Well, what about iOS? What about Android? What about macOS? Since this renders completely in Teams and also in Teams Mobile will be your framework, right? So you only have to create a card, whether it's a custom card or a card designer once, and it will render the same way on iOS or on Android. So that way, instead of going, for example, with a student dashboard that you build yourself, where you have to build a functionality in iOS and have to build a functionality in Android, now you can bring it into Teams. So they have all the functionality.
I didn't know if you were calling to tell me something had gone wrong.
Okay, somebody is on mute.
Got it.
So
yeah.
No problem. Those things happen. All good. So it means that you can focus really on the student experience rather than duplication of features because some people have an iOS device and some people have an Android device, right? So that is essential. And that is something really that we wanted to emphasize because if we're looking, for example, at our preview numbers, over 80% of the consumption by students of Viva Connections by Education is done on the mobile experience. And it's also one of the things that students are the most excited about is the fact that they now can say, okay, it does not matter where I'm at, when I'm looking at my information, what device I'm using for my information, and that way you can actually have the same type of experience. So we're also working with partners. What is very important is that Viva Connections, the cards that you see in Viva Connections, are built on top of the SharePoint framework. So that's an open standard. So you can build your own cards. We're currently already working with customers that are building cards to their own system to showcase information relevant to their students and make that available. Just to give you an idea, we have customers that in a matter of days just build a card from scratch, never built a card before, where they visualize specific information from their own non-Microsoft systems, right? As long as you have an API that you can talk to, we can pull out the information and visualize it here. So the upskilling is not that hard. If you have a team that knows how to write some code and understands the basic of API calling, that's something that you can do. Now, if you don't have that, no problem. We have partners that can help you with that as well. Here's some partners that we called out that already created cards and made cards available. But we have in Viva what we call a Viva card store. So we have vendors that make these cards available in the store that you can just reuse, put on your dashboard, right? So that's very important. I'm going to show one more thing before I go into the demo. Now, because a lot of people are looking for some guidance, some hands holding on how to deploy this, what is the adoption availability, what are the best practices for adoption. We launched today an adoption toolkit for Viva Connections or Education that really consists of the three main or big parts. The first one, I think, is about 65 pages of here's how you deploy it, here's how you do the adoption, here's some ideas that you might want to implement when it comes to student interaction on Viva Connections. We also have day in a life for students that you can customize. It's an editable file or a customizable file that you can then make your own, do your own branding on it, share with your students, and really use it as almost a marketing material to showcase what the possibilities are. And then finally, we also have communication templates in OTFs, Word that you can deploy, whether it's through SharePoint News, whether it's through email, those are ready to go. Again, you can fully customize this, you can brand them, you can change the layout. We give you a starting point that you can just start using that. Before I go into the demos, question, comments, concerns, rebuttals?
Jethro, there's a couple of questions here. I'm not sure if you want to address them now, but
Yeah, go for it.
just quickly, will notifications in Viva Connections require a premium license?
It will not at this point. So Viva, so everything that you have today, the notifications won't at this point be a premium, but that's still something that we are looking into for some of the higher SKUs where they're going to be landing. So no problem.
So not for now, but maybe a freemium
Correct.
version in the future.
Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
And question, is this preview or generally available?
So Viva Connections, the platform is already available today. You're going to see if you go into your Teams app that in an education tenant by default is turned off. You just have to turn it on. The two things that are being released in the next few, literally next 2 to 3 weeks is the assignments card for Teams and the courses card for Teams. If you want them, they're currently in private preview because we're so close to GA, we're not really enabling it for anybody. So by the end of May, this should be completely all GA.
Great. Okay, and then does this use data store outside of Azure AD for student information? For example, we don't sync groups with class rosters into Azure Active Directory due to FERPA and the inability to limit who can see the group membership. So how would we target in this app?
Yeah, you need some kind of, you can do it per user. That's a little bit tricky because you will have a lot of students, I assume. So if you don't have some kind of group membership in Azure Active Directory, then it might be a little bit difficult on how to audience that. If you're, so that would be the only tricky thing. If you don't have any groups, that's really where we rely on for the audiencing part.
Okay, and then we've got just a question for popping the link from the last slide into the chat for us, if we can do that. Also, can we remove the other Viva modules from appearing if we are not using them?
They're based on licenses, so if the service is not available to the student, they should automatically disappear.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and then I think the last question is really probably just a trampoline jump into where you're headed next. So just explaining a little bit more of what's in the education version of Connections versus the non-education version. We've seen, you know, obviously the very EDU specific cards on the dashboard, et cetera, and some of the integrations, but I'll leave it to you to keep moving, and we've got about 10 minutes left.
No worries. So you're 100% correct. The core functionality is not different, right? So what we're doing is really helping our customers to make the translation from an employee strategic focused branding messaging within Microsoft to how do you translate this, for example, into a broader education space. So our commercial, if you talk to the commercial Viva team, they will not touch education customers. They're just not, that's not their focus. That's where we come in, right? And so what we're looking at is multiple things. One is, for example, the two cards that we as Microsoft make available. One is the assignments. Right now, that is Teams assignments and Teams courses. Additionally, we also have made already 2 code samples available. I will share that with you as well. They're available open source on this GitHub link. There we go, which is around tuition fees and around scholarships. 3 more are in the pipeline to be released this week around library loans. So we're making specific cards available unique to education. Does not mean that commercial team cannot use it, but we as Microsoft Education focus on making sure that that is done. Plus, we're also translating everything in education specific scenarios, right? They're going to call this employee engagement. We're really looking forward to that connection with the student, making sure that the student has full capabilities within this platform. Additionally, one of the main differences is that you guys get this for free, right? So Viva Connections for Education is fully integrated in A1. There's no additional cost to anything I'm showing right now, not on the cards, not on the functionality, not on our toolkit, etc. So we're just making sure that the scenarios are making sense for you guys and that all the code samples that we provide are fully up to date for education specific scenarios. So that's really what we have here. So what is very important here is that you have full capabilities of managing this. So what I'm going to do is really show you how to add cards, how to audience this, right? So when we go into our edit mode, very quickly, what we have here is our cards. And once everything is released, you're going to see here an assignments card, courses card. These are our cards that are available. You can, of course, upload your own functionality, whether you get these from the GitHub that I've just shared, whether you're creating those yourself. So this is a number of examples that I've implemented, but we also have a store here at the bottom. For example, if you want to showcase how many unread emails a student has, you can do that as well. There's a card here called My Emails that is by WMI, a partner that created that. The same thing for a calendar functionality. We have our own calendar functionality, but they've created a similar one. probably because they could. But you have full accessibility and full access to all the cards that are in the store. If they consume a specific service that is not a Microsoft service, there might be a license cost associated with that. But with the card itself, there's never a cost, right? So you never have to pay to deploy a specific card. Now, when I go into the configuration of the card, now you can start customizing this. You can say this is a medium card, right? So instead of like two icons next to each other, you get one. You can change the title. You can change the custom image. Here's, for example, where the audiences comes in. So if you have a group with engineering students, now only the members of this specific group are going to see this, right? Now, what is really cool is that you can immediately jump into preview. What you're going to see is that my assignments card suddenly disappeared. Well, that's because I'm not a part of that audience. So now you can kind of see how that audiences works as well, is that if you're not a member of that group, you're just not going to see that card. If I would log in with a different student, I could definitely show you that that card then appears if they're a member of that specific group. Now, I told you it's the same experience for a mobile experience. Proof is in the pudding. I can actually switch here immediately to my mobile experience, and that's how a student is going to see that on their mobile device as well. So I didn't have to deploy anything different. I did not have to create a dedicated mobile dashboard or anything like that. So you have that full experience. So if I close my preview, now I have my assignments card back. I can remove this. And when I'm done with it, I can just republish this. And now it's being distributed to the different people or the different students in my organization. One thing that has been announced, so I can talk about it. Right now, in your current situation, it's one dashboard for everybody. So if you're already using a dashboard functionality for your faculty and staff, let's say, then you really have to design it with not just faculty, staff, but also students in mind, which can be a little bit more complicated. We are releasing a functionality called the multi-home instance. So what you will be able to do is create multiple dashboards target to a group of people. So you can say, this is a dashboard for students. This is a dashboard for faculty. This is a dashboard for staff. This potentially is a dashboard for researchers. And then you control what's on these dashboards. So you can control the type of dashboards that are going to be available. Targeted GA is back to school Northern Hemisphere. So let's say September, latest October is when that feature would come out. Private preview is available, starts actually in 11 days from now. So if that would pique your interest, if that's something that you wanted to participate in, that's absolutely something that we can help you as well, right? So this is my dashboard. I have my newsfeed here. I have my resources here at the bottom. What is the difference between this and this? This is a more design card. This is just a quick link, but the functionality is the same. When I click on this, it will actually take me to, in this case, a form, right? In this case, it takes me to a transportation site. So you're in full control of, do you want a more complete experience where it is pulling information directly from the right systems, or do I just want a quick link? Now, what is very important, and I didn't call it out, normally I do that in the beginning, is this is not just a read-only type of dashboard. It's not, here's the information and now figure it out. In this case, for example, where I have a past due assignment, I can click on the assignment. It will take me automatically to the right assignment. And I don't have to think about, oh, which is this assignment a member of? Is this, what class is this in? I can just do the same thing here. For example, if I want to go to algebra, it takes me directly to the right information. You can do that with non-Microsoft systems as well. As long as they have APIs available, then you can actually do that. I see there's a question from Aaron coming up. How many cards? The cards you see here are 12 initial cards. Now, if you have more than 12 cards, which is totally perfect, you can totally do that. Let me go in here into Teams real quick. If you have more, there will just be a button that says See All, which will then take you to the full dashboard with all the cards that are available. Normally in this version, I should have that. Let's see, I have a bunch of stuff open. There we go. So I have more than 12 cards in this case. I click on the See All, and it takes me to the bigger dashboard where I have all my cards available. On the mobile experience, you immediately have all your cards because there's no See All button. But here on the desktop, we show you the 12 primary cards first. So the 12 most used common that you want to present to your students, and then you have is See All. So really easy to set up. You're in full control of this. Like I mentioned, you can actually put a Power App in here. If you have Viva Learning available. You can make your own cafeteria available, your news. And then the final thing I'm going to show before I open it up for questions, this is multilingual. This is in French. So you see that assignments is translated, classes is translated, dashboards is translated, feed is translated, resources is available, right? So you have that complete control over different languages, and it automatically takes the language of the, or let me rephrase that, takes the preferred language that is defined on the Microsoft 365 profile of the user as the language where it's going to present the dashboard in. Questions? Things you want to see deeper?
Yeah, I'm just, I think they're asking a little bit about any customizations of the feed, which I think has been a little addressed, but.
Yeah, the customization of the feed, there's two. So the feed will come from 3 places. The feed will come from SharePoint, Viva Engage, and Stream. The feed is targeted to the user who's logged in. So whether it's by audience, whether it's by security trimming, they will only see what is relevant. One thing, and I will show that, let me see if I have one available real quick. I don't think I do. Oh, yes, I do. What you can do is you can boost an article. Let me zoom in a little bit. So you can, of course, now I'm zooming in too much. Boosted means that it's going to be in the top of the feed for as long as you want it to. So normally, let me give you an example. Let's say that you have a speaker on campus that is on June the 1st. You boost the article until June the 1st. On June 2nd, when the event has happened, it starts to go down into the feed. And after 30 days, it's completely gone.
What about the location of the feed, Jethro? Is there any way to customize where that feed appears or no?
No, that's a fixed layout.
Okay, and then what about the notifications? Do those reach through the rest of the team's activity panel?
So the notification, so there's 2 types of notifications. So for example, if a message is pushed through Viva Engage or Teams or SharePoint, that will just come up into your activity feed. There is a component of notifications coming directed into Viva Connections. That's later this year. So that is still under development. They're still designing that, but it does not take away any notifications you already get through a notification feed in Teams.
Perfect. Well, I feel like we could probably have another whole half an hour of Q&A on this topic, but we are at 5 o'clock. So folks, please feel free to continue the conversation in the chat or in our team. Jethro, thank you so much. And hopefully, as some of these developments continue, we'd love to have you back and do a 2.0. And for those who will see this rolling out, if you are rolling out Viva Connections for Education, you have our forum always, but Jethro just put his contact information as well in the chat. So thanks again, Jethro. This was an awesome session. As a faculty member, I'm so excited about this, and I want to do all I can to make it available to my students. So this is just awesome work, and thanks so much for being here with us.
Of course, no problem. Thank you.
All right, guys, we will see you next week, hopefully with a bigger co-hosting team, but thanks for holding it down with me, Victoria.
Of course, always.